What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, Natty Boss, registered dietitian, fitness coach, and lifestyle coach of bodybyboss.com. Today, we're doing something fun and different on my channel, and I'm bringing along one of my colleagues, Jim Schultz, and we're going to do a little collab here. We kind of crossed paths doing a program together, and we found we had a lot of similar fitness backgrounds and beliefs and stuff, so we wanted to kind of do a collab and kind of share our knowledge, expertise, experience with fat loss, because it's a question that both of our viewers get a lot of, right, Jim? Yeah, so
that's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, so we figured why not kind of bring both of our two worlds together and just kind of have a discussion on what we think some of our top tips for fat loss have been, and maybe what works for me doesn't necessarily work for him, but because of the different backgrounds, it's always nice to get those different perspectives. So thanks, Jim, for being on here. Why don't we first and foremost, before we get on here and kind of dive into the discussion, let's hear a little bit about your background and how you got started with fitness.
Absolutely. Thanks, Natty. Thank you so much for having me on, by the way. It was exciting to meet you and get to know a little bit more about you and what you're trying to do. And I'm really excited about, the content that we've got going on tonight. So my company, my brand is F Cubed, Fitness, Finance, and Faith. So I combine kind of the three things that have really kind of governed my life for as long as I can remember. And from a fitness standpoint, when I was growing up, I was always a really big, overweight kid. I was made fun of. I was picked on. I was laughed at. I was all those things. And then when I graduated high school, I discovered competitive natural bodybuilding, and I've been a bodybuilder ever since. And so fat loss for me, it's been a long, hard journey, as I know you can relate to yourself. And so I'm excited about what we can share with your viewers and my viewers here tonight. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. So without further ado, we are going to get right into it. But just so you guys know, make sure you're tuning in for the next few weeks, because we're going to break this series up into 3 different videos, just so you guys can really engage with the conversation and understand each of the topics, because a lot of these topics can be, really convoluted, so much information, so much to talk about. So we don't want you to kind of lose track of all of the different things. So if we break it up, I think it'll be easier for you to really understand. And if you have any particular questions about this particular tip that we talk about tonight, then you can always put that in the comment section below. You can message Jim, you can message me. If there's anything particular about either of our journeys or anything that we said, we would love, love, love to help you. I'm sure he would love to help you as well.
Definitely. Be happy to.
Awesome. So the first tip that we wanted to talk about, which if you follow me on Instagram or any of my videos on YouTube so far, I'm a really huge fan of high intensity interval training, which is called HIIT for short. So let's have Jim, why don't you take the discussion on this? And I've done a little bit of bodybuilding as well. I've done the figures stage, which I have incorporated some of this HIIT in it more towards the end. But I'm curious to see, since I primarily focus on martial arts and kind of competitive sports that are weight-based and things like that, as opposed to being a hardcore bodybuilder, there's definitely different styles there. So where does high-intensity interval training kind of fall into place with you and what you're trying to do? Maybe if you're stepping on stage, or how you train and incorporate that for fat loss on your journey when you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I get into competition prep and I'm in like max fat loss mode, my first preferred form of cardio is always HIIT. I always start with like 1 or 2 HIIT sessions per week. And the way I like to structure my HIIT is I'll do like really, really short bursts. Yeah. Like really short, like 10 or 15 seconds. And I try to go all out, everything I've got, life or death, as hard as possible. Because I've actually found, I kind of figured this out anecdotally, I guess, but then there's some really cool research that I read maybe a year and a half ago that shows, like, it's going to be hard to do, like, with my hand. I wish I had the graph in front of me, but, like, there's, like, an upward slope that, like, as your intensity goes up, the rate of fat loss goes up, which makes sense. But once your intensity level goes above 90%, the slope of the curve actually increases, which means you actually start to burn more fat than you were at like lower intensities. And so I saw that and I'm like, wow, that's exactly what I've been experiencing. And so when I do my HIIT sessions, that's kind of my go-to.
That's awesome. That's crazy that you do even 10 or 15 seconds, which for you guys out there watching, that's good news for you because you can push yourself to your absolute max, but it's mentally you're able to actually do that because you know you only have 10, 15 seconds.
You only have 10 seconds or 12 seconds. You're like, all right, I can go all out and I can coast for a minute or two.
Yeah.
And I think what's really cool is you actually structure yours a little differently, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I have a few different go-tos that I like specifically, but I think it's so important that it really depends on your fitness level. So I've been doing these style workouts because it really complements what I do, explosive sports, for a long time. So I can actually push myself to my absolute capacity for a longer period of time than maybe somebody just starting out on their fitness journey because I have so much experience. So a lot of the times if I was to do even like a 15-second burst, it doesn't really push my body to my absolute max because I can basically push my gas a little bit more. So depending on this, how I'm structuring it, for the general rule of thumb for high intensity interval training circuits is that for the body to stay in an anaerobic state, which is where these thrive for burning the fat, you don't want to go more than 2 minutes of that extreme kind of intensity. So I like to break it up like 40 seconds with a 20-second rest. That's more of like the advanced people. A lot of the times I do 30 seconds. A very easy one to start could be a 30-second on, 30-second off. But again, this has to be like full out when you go. You can't just, lazily just go 5 reps in the 30 seconds. You really need to push because otherwise you're not going to reap the benefits. Like you were saying, when you hit that slope, that's where that fat burn comes into play. And then the other one is a very simple one for beginners, and that's more of like a Tabata style, like a 20-second of one exercise, 20-second of another, 20-second of another. But in order to keep that intensity throughout those 20 seconds back to back, I like to maybe vary up the exercise. So for instance, something like a burpee, which takes a lot of energy out of you, that would be a 20-second.
Ooh, burpee.
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
nasty variations.
Brutal, man. Yeah.
Nasty variations.
Yeah.
But then, like, if I know that I have another 20 seconds to do something, then I would still do something that's just not as extreme, such as maybe a plank jack. So I'll be on like an elbow plank, and I'll jump my feet out like jumping jacks. So I'm still pushing and pushing, but it also gives you a chance to actually take a breath, as opposed to like a burpee to some other crazy plyo exercise. So it's a way to still push yourself, but you're also giving yourself a little leeway by not having such an intense exercise back to back, if that makes any sense.
Definitely. No, that makes 100% sense. And I love everything you said because, it's so cool that like your end goal is martial arts. Like your end goal is very different from my end goal.
Yeah.
But we have this common denominator where we both have realized the benefits of pushing ourselves to the max, giving us the most efficient use of our time, which I think that's one of the biggest benefits of HIIT, man. You can burn fat so fast and so efficiently.
I'm curious, when you do your high-intensity interval training, do you like to do them on an empty stomach? Do you usually how do you usually go about it? Is it usually a day just designed for like a cardio, or do you add it to your weights? And does it change when you're lifting maybe in a bulking season versus like a shredding season?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So when I do all of my cardio, I used to be a fasted cardio I used to be on board with fasted cardio. I've kind of taken a look at the evidence and I've kind of used my own anecdotal experience, and I think fasted cardio is fine, but I don't know if it's offering as many benefits as I once maybe thought it did. So now, especially with something like HIIT, where, like if you're just walking or on the elliptical, it probably doesn't matter as much. But with HIIT, the goal is to go as hard as you possibly can, right? So I treat it very much like a training session. And so I want to make sure I'm fueled up for those cardio sessions too. I generally try to do my HIIT sessions a separate time, independent from my weight sessions. But if I have to do them together, I always do weights first and HIIT second. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just a little tidbit to wrap up this tip here, the idea of supersets. And just like when I'm doing a heavy lift, then I'll just quickly go off to the side and I'll do like 20 jump squats as fast as I can. And even that is a small form of HIIT, where even though you're not timed with like specific exercises, but these integrated into these heavy lifting sessions help, I believe, to really push that fat burning mode into like overdrive. What is your thought on doing that?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of supersets, especially if your time is so limited, right? I mean, you talked about this earlier, and I know, you coach so many clients, and, and I'm in contact with so many people where the number one excuse that we get, Natalie, all the time is, I just don't have time for this stuff, right? Yep. So it's like, to me, something like HIIT or supersets, it's like, this is a slam dunk, man. Like, especially with HIIT, like, you're going to get the faster fat loss, and it's going to save you a bunch of time.
Yeah, I
know.
So
it's just an easy thing to do. Supersets are a great way to push a lot of volume through in a very short amount of time.
Real quick, because I just realized, in case you guys don't know, even though if you follow me, you should know this definition, but in case you don't, no worries. Superset is 2 exercises back to back with little to no rest in between. So it's really pushing yourself back to back. So again, it's that same kind of idea of pushing yourself. So those are a great tool as well for fat loss. But when it comes to HIIT, the biggest thing to really reap the benefits, in summary, is really to make sure that it's short, intense bursts of exercise followed by rest, because you do want to recover so you can kind of catch your breath so that you can go 100% during that next set. So that's the benefit of HIIT. As you can see, it helps in martial arts. It helps in bodybuilding. It's a great tool. And there's different styles, as you saw, that both Jim and I, we kind of structure ours a little differently. So that should give you some kind of motivation that, like, there's nothing cookie cutter. As long as you're really just doing exercises that you can do depending on your fitness level, pushing yourself to your limit, taking small rests, start slow. And then again, if you have any questions on high intensity interval training, Jim, your girl, we got you. Just shoot us a comment section below, or you can message him personally. And guys, I will put that all in the description box, obviously, because you're not going to remember that. So let's put that in the description box. And thanks again, Jim. We were going to tune back in next week so we could talk about tip number 2. Thanks, guys. See you later.